What? It's good to be out on a day like this.
Yeah, it is a nice day. I think I'll move down to the bottom of this slope. Maybe I can see something down there.
Right. Be careful. Steep and loose down there. Charlie, hold on. I'm coming. Take it easy, Charlie. It's my leg. I saw a form back down the road. I'll get help. Give me your belt. It's bleeding pretty bad. This will help slow it down a little bit. Try not to move.
It's not very likely that I'll be moving. I'd feel pretty stupid if it didn't hurt so much.
I'll be right back. Right, Sheriff. He fell. His gun went off. It's his leg.
Okay, calm down. Where are you?
Out on Rattlesnake Ridge. No, I'm calling from the Ellis farm. Yes, you better send help. He's bleeding bad.
Okay, I'll contact Mast, and you go back and wait with him. We'll have a helicopter out there in just a few minutes.
I'm going back now.
MAST stands for Military Assistance to Safety and Traffic. But what MAST really means is saving lives. Saving lives by using all the skills of military air medical teams in peacetime. Answering calls for help from civilians caught in emergencies. The air ambulance has proved its value in meeting emergencies in remote areas. By cutting across country and hurtling objects, it can cut miles and precious minutes from emergency missions. The crews of the military air ambulance are well trained in emergency medical work. Most crew members served in medical rescue operations in Vietnam and are capable of handling any emergency. During the fast trip in the air ambulance, the skills of the medical aidman and crew of the helicopter provide the patient with the best treatment available until he's delivered to the hospital. MAST missions have been flown in answer to many kinds of civilian emergencies. Hunting accidents, highway accidents, climbing accidents, avalanches, flood victims, premature births. Wherever there is a MAST operation, emergencies in remote areas receive fast air rescue. One of the installations where MAST is in operation is at Fort Lewis, Washington. The MAST program is the result of a joint undertaking by the Departments of Transportation, Health, Education and Welfare, and Defense. Operations have been started where there is a military installation with an air rescue training program in operation. MAST does not require additional money or new programs to be put into operation. The MAST operation at Fort Lewis has been effective because the terrain in the area is rugged. Population centers are scattered, and immediate ground ambulance service in these areas is not always possible. The MAST program at Fort Lewis services many hospitals in the state of Washington. These include St. Peter's General Hospital in Olympia, Harborview Hospital in Seattle, St. Joseph's General Hospital in Tacoma, and the Madigan Army Medical Center at Fort Lewis. Another massed operation is at Mountain Home Air Force Base in Idaho, where the Air Force has Huey helicopter air ambulances available for civilian rescue work. A cardinal rule of all massed operations is that a massed mission must never interfere with the primary military missions of air ambulances and crews. Mast is a supplement to civilian operations, not a replacement for them. The terrain around Mountain Home also is fairly rugged. Population centers scattered. Massed missions have been flown to these remote areas that cannot be reached fast enough on the ground. The Mountain Home Air Force Base provides services to hospitals in the Boise area, one of which is St. Alphonsus Hospital. A massed operation is conducted by the Army at Fort Carson, Colorado, where missions are flown from remote population areas to hospitals in Denver. Massed air ambulances have a rescue area of approximately 100 nautical miles from the supporting military activity. Major factors influencing these operating constraints include condition of the patients to be flown, operating range of the aircraft used, and other transport capabilities. Many rescue missions have delivered patients from the rugged, remote areas around Fort Carson to the hospitals in Denver. Another massed operation is conducted by the Army at Fort Sam Houston in Texas. This operation serves the San Antonio area. The air ambulances used at Fort Sam Houston are also Hueys, capable of carrying a total of 3 litter patients and 4 ambulatory patients. The medical equipment carried on board each Huey includes litters, blankets, oxygen, leg splints, breathing assistance equipment, vacuum pump, wire splints, assorted bandages, sphygmomanometer, resuscitator, tourniquets, backboard, pharyngeal airways, IV fluids, surgical instruments, and other items. In addition to the standard equipment carried aboard the helicopters during all missions, special equipment such as an incubator, defibrillator, cardio beeper, Doppler flow meter, or other items needed on some missions is available to the medical aidman on request. The helicopter with all equipment aboard is vital in saving lives. But the crew of the air ambulance is what really makes Mast successful. Many of the men have flown rescue missions during combat in Vietnam. They are highly qualified in the operation of their helicopters. Each medical aidman in Mast has received over 400 hours of medical training. He receives emergency medical care training and is also proficient in basic anatomy and physiology. He is trained in the handling of the sick and injured, disease prevention, the use of common drugs, medical symptomatology, field surgery, and basic nursing procedures. The medical aidmen attend courses in pediatrics, gynecology, neonatology, and cardiopulmonary resuscitation. They are ready for almost any emergency that may arise. The medical aidmen of Mast maintain close contact with civilian doctors in the area hospitals so that they are familiar with the equipment and facilities available to them. The more cooperation there is between the civilian and military members of the MAST team, the more efficient and effective MAST will be in saving lives. The Medical Corps monitors the specialized medical training and procedures required for aeromedical evacuation personnel used in the program. Since military alert requirements dictate that aeromedical units be available for emergency evacuation missions any time of the day or night, one primary four-man crew made up of a pilot, co-pilot, medical aidman, and crew chief is on 24-hour alert at the unit operations. A second crew is on call. Should an emergency develop, the primary crew can be airborne in a matter of minutes.
R193 El Paso, requesting MAST services. A single car accident, State Highway 90, approximately 20 miles south of Van Horn.
Calls are received at the MAST room at the heliport on a special phone number. Calls are accepted from police authorities, doctors, or hospital administrators. While the rest of the crew readies the helicopter, the pilot obtains all information as to the location, number of patients, and other data needed to complete the mission. When the pilot has confirmed the location of the accident scene, he computes the estimated time of arrival for transmittal to the receiving hospital. Once the pilot has all the necessary information, the air ambulance is ready for takeoff, and the mission will be underway within minutes after receiving the call for help.
Roger, DPS 4193. We have your location. Estimate arrival in 5 minutes. We understand 1 letter and 1 ambulatory.
Affirmative. You can sit down by the highway. There are no obstacles and you can get to the injured.
Confirmed, DPS 4193. We understand injured requested Providence Hospital, and arrangements have been made.
Whenever possible, the patients may request the hospital of their choice. If the patients are unable to communicate, the patrolman at the scene or other authorities can determine the appropriate hospital by location or facilities available. On the flight to the hospital, the medical aidman takes care of the patients and performs as complete a diagnosis as possible. This diagnosis, along with an updated time of arrival, is then transmitted to the hospital so that the patients will have the best care available when they arrive. Because of the foresight of men of the Departments of Transportation, Health, Education and Welfare, and Defense, MAST has become a life-saving mission of the military in peacetime. Hundreds of missions have been flown to answer the call of civilian emergencies. In addition to responding to accidents, many MAST missions have been flown in the transfer of infants, the critically ill, and severely injured from one hospital to another. MAST operations are being expanded into new areas. For instance, at Fort Ord, Fort Bliss, Fort Hood, Fort Sill, Fort Riley, Fort Knox, Fort Benning, Fort Rucker, MacDill Air Force Base, Fort Stewart, Fort Jackson, Fort Bragg. The program is being initiated at many military installations where Army Air Ambulance or Air Force Aerospace Rescue and Recovery units are located. The two most important elements of a successful MAST operation are cooperation and communications. Organization of the people who make up the civilian medical emergency system is essential. The more cooperation there is between community leaders, hospital administrators, doctors, law enforcement agencies and political leaders, civilian rescue services, and the military, the more effective will be the MAST program which is undertaken. It is these civilians and the military representatives that make up the Mast Coordinating Committee responsible for mast operations in any area. The communication network is essential to the success of a mast operation. The equipment for military air ambulance communications with the civilian emergency system is supplied by the community and installed in the military helicopters. In the event of a national emergency in which the military would be needed at a different part of the world, this communications equipment would remain as a part of the civilian emergency medical service operations. It is tragic that more than 100,000 Americans lose their lives each year in accidents, and that more than 400,000 are permanently disabled. It is a terrible statistic that more than 50,000 Americans die in highway accidents. The air ambulance, operating under the MAST program, has been instrumental in saving the lives of some of the people injured in these accidents. Since MAST began in 1970, thousands of missions have been flown. MAST also is used to deliver vital human organs and urgently needed quantities of whole blood. Whether the terrain is mountainous, remote, rugged, deserted, inaccessible, or highly congested, MAST has proved that it works in the areas where it has been tried. The helicopter can reach areas where no ground transportation can travel, and it can perform its speeds many times faster than any form of ground rescue. While it is not feasible to extend its service over the entire country and reach every city and town, MAST is in operation in many areas. MAST elements have received scores of letters praising their service. The real value of MAST is found in the lives which have been rescued. Saving lives. What greater peacetime mission can there be for the military? In a few minutes, these Army combat troops will be miles from here. They will arrive at the place and at the time dictated by the necessities of their mission. They will pass swiftly over terrain that would take days of travel on foot. They arrive fresh, fully equipped, and ready to function. This is possible because of the strange-looking, savage-sounding machines that brought them, the Army helicopters. And the men who fly the choppers are skilled, highly trained professionals, experts in this new aspect of Army mobility. Just where and how these men acquire that expertise is the subject of today's Big Picture. Today, most of the Army's chopper pilots begin their training here at Fort Walters, Texas.
I done crashed my whirly bird. I done crashed my whirly bird. And my IP, he got killed. And my IP, he got killed. Oh my goodness, what a thrill. Oh my goodness, what a thrill. You now Charlie Tom. You got it with Charlie Tom. Am I right or wrong? You're right. Can I sing a song.
One of the main sources of trained copter pilots is the Army's Warrant Officer Candidate Program. Those who qualify enlist especially for copter training, and if they make it, they graduate both as warrant officers and as qualified pilots. But that day seems a long way off when a candidate first begins his pre-flight training at Fort Walters, and his new way of life is reflected by his room. Orderly, precise, disciplined. On arrival, each candidate receives an APH-5 flight helmet. He knows it will be weeks before he can wear it for real, but it's nice to look forward to. Meantime, in 4 weeks of pre-flight instruction, he is introduced to the why of aerodynamic lift, the how of heavier-than-air flight. He comes to understand just what it is that makes it possible to put a heavy piece of machinery into the sky and keep it there. He spends a lot of time on his map reading technique because he'll be traveling across the terrain a lot faster than a man on foot who can stop and puzzle things out. He learns a new language, terms like coning and coning angle, rotor tip path plane, blade twist, pendular action, torque reaction. These come to have meaning for him eventually. And just when he thinks the big day will never come, it does. Here, the fledgling pilot will learn how a helicopter actually works in the new TH-55 trainer. It's a standard commercial model, unmodified or off the shelf. Basically, all copter controls are the same. Move this gizmo up to go up, down to go down. The stick in your right hand controls movement to the sides, forward or backward. The pedals are for keeping the copter headed where you want it headed. From the main heliport at Walters, the copters take off to fan out toward the various training fields or stage fields scattered throughout the countryside. On a good flying day, some 400 copters will be in the air, which means a lot of learning is going on. During pre-solo, the instructor pilot, or IP, is a civilian from a large company contracted for the job. These civilian experts are real pros when it comes to instructing, and at the various stage fields around Fort Walters, they really work at it. The student watches how it's done, the strange business of hovering hundreds of pounds of machinery above the ground, hanging on a set of whistling blades. For a hummingbird, it's natural. For a man strapped into a vibrating seat while something that roars and swishes picks him up and holds him, it's an experience. In the jam-packed weeks ahead, there are many more moments the candidate pilot will remember. For example, the sudden chilling drop, the first time the instructor cuts power and uses the unpowered whirling blades to bring the chopper down safely in a simulated emergency landing. These pre-solo hours of flight go swiftly. There's a lot to do. Watching the work of an expert, seeing how it's done, and feeling how it's done by following his movements on the controls. Then comes another moment to remember.
Okay, you take it.
Well, everybody has to start somewhere. Actually, for most of these hand-picked candidates, it doesn't take long to get the feel of things. Soon the day comes when the candidate brings it in for a nice, smooth landing. And a new phase of his flight training is about to begin. It's time to solo. He knows he's ready, or they wouldn't be sending him up alone. But it sure feels different with that other seat empty. That first solo flight is a major step forward, one which deserves and gets the special recognition of his fellow candidates. Having soloed, he now wears wings on his cap. And from now on, his instructors will be experienced Army pilots, almost all of them combat veterans of Vietnam. Under his military instructors, he gets out of the traffic pattern. Now his flying is cross-country, and rugged country it is. He has to learn to fly low and fast, and keep track of where he is and where he's going. This takes a lot of practice. Low-level navigation is tough because a copter moving at 70 knots, 50 feet off the ground, uses up landmarks like a jet moving at 1,400 knots, 1,000 feet up. Daily, as the challenges become more difficult, the candidate's ability and confidence grow. The candidate starts learning to coordinate his flight with other aircraft, formation flying and aerial reconnaissance under all sorts of weather, temperature, and lighting conditions. The combat chopper pilot will face all these situations and worse. The time to learn is now. The instructors work hard, and they work their students hard. Now is the time to analyze mistakes and get them corrected. A veteran instructor knows the cost of a single mistake if it is made in the air above a valley full of Viet Cong. And so it goes. Half of each day is spent on the flight line. And the other half in classroom instruction until, almost before he realizes it, he's graduating. Now his primary training is over, and the next phase is about to begin, halfway across the country. Fort Rucker, Alabama is the home of the United States Army Aviation Center. It will also be the candidate's home for his final weeks of training. Hanshy Army Airfield at Fort Rucker is the largest heliport in the free world, except for An Key in Vietnam. When training is in full swing, there are more takeoffs and landings performed here than at all three major New York airports. From here, on an average day, some 600 copters will be operating. And this takes elbow room. Well over 3 million square feet of concrete hardtop. Still, the individual candidate is really interested only in the space it takes to accommodate one chopper, his. And for the first 50 hours of flying here at Rucker, that means a TH-13T, which is specially equipped for instrument training. The candidate has already learned the fundamentals of flying a copter at Fort Walters. Now he must begin to master the complexities. At first glance, it looks like a lot of instruments to keep track of. And it is, but oddly enough, that isn't the problem so much as learning to trust the instruments. When you can't see anything but the instruments, your senses may tell you you're flying upside down. But if the instruments say not, you've got to believe the instruments. At Fort Rucker, this is literally the first thing the candidate pilot has to learn. Once he has learned to trust his instrument panel rather than his easily fooled senses, the candidate learns to use that trust. He learns to navigate from point to point by homing on radio beacons, an activity known as ADF operations. He also learns how to make a ground-controlled approach, GCA, which simply means that you come in for a landing when you can't see the ground on the basis of instructions given to you by a man on the ground who is tracking you on radar. It takes a bit of learning, but it's worth the effort. This ability is like a ship's life raft. When you need it bad. Once his instrument training is completed, the candidate is ready for a meeting he's been looking forward to with the UH-1, the Huey. Fast, streamlined, gas turbine powered. This is not another trainer. This is a tough and versatile veteran aircraft that has proven itself in combat. This, he feels, and well he might, is the real McCoy. Fort Rucker has 8 stage fields to work from, and it gets full use out of all of them. Here the candidate practices and re-practices under the experienced eyes of his veteran instructor. Landings with power and without. And the candidate cannot now be satisfied just to land without bending the hardware. He must land by the book and on the spot. And even if he does it perfectly, it's try again. As the candidate's skill develops, he faces the challenge of working in and out of some ticklish places. As the book calls them, pinnacles, confined areas, and slopes. As he circles to check it out, this confined area looks like just what his instructor says it is. A circle of perfect safety surrounded by disaster. If you should come in too steep or too close to the trees or make any one of a dozen wrong moves, you could, as they say in chopper circles, roll it up in a little ball. The learning goes on, and in more ways than one. In the maintenance training area at Rucker, crew chiefs-to-be are trained in the intricacies of keeping all the parts cooperating so that the chopper as a whole can fly. No potential pilot can afford to ignore the maintenance end of things either. Here at Rucker, each candidate pilot becomes familiar with the basic operational systems of the helicopter. It may not be as exciting as handling the controls of a Huey in flight, but maintenance, everyday, undramatic maintenance, may be the difference between a machine you can depend on and one that might let you down hard. The pilot who wants to keep on flying keeps this in mind. And they do keep on flying, sharpening their skills, practicing the techniques that are part of combat aviation, like low-level, high-speed approaches to a target area in an armed copter. Familiarization runs in the armed Huey gunships are part of every candidate's training at Rucker. The rule is, flash in just above the treetops, drop down over the machine gun range, moving fast and ready to shoot. Finally, everything the candidate pilot has learned is put to the test during an 8-day problem in the field toward the end of his stay at Rucker. For a week and a day, he lives and works in the boondocks, getting a foretaste of the type of working conditions he'll experience overseas. Troop lift, resupply, casualty evacuation, armed reconnaissance, armed escort, day and night navigation from point to point, on schedule and on the mark. This is what this 8 days is all about. And there's no doubt in anyone's mind as to the reality of the operation they are preparing for. Here, the instructor pilots, like the battle-seasoned veterans the newcomers will fly within the combat zone, act as older brothers, advisors, and examples. But they are still the IPs, constantly watching, grading, evaluating the performance of each candidate. And by now, that performance is at a fairly high level. Proficiency in handling aircraft as such is one thing. However, the exacting business of going from A to B to C with maximum accuracy and minimum loss of time is something more. This vital ABC gets plenty of attention during these 8 days. Jerry cans full of sand provide weight to simulate a full load of troops or supplies and give the chopper the handling and lift characteristics that a payload over Vietnam would have. It's a full 8 days, and they make the most of it. They work as long as there's daylight. Then they work some more when there is no daylight. The candidate rests whenever he can, just as he will in a combat zone. And just as in a combat zone, this is called an eagle flight. No warning, just the knowledge that at any time, day or night, the alarm may sound. And from that moment, everyone is moving against a stopwatch. From a sound sleep, through the operations briefing, into the previously inspected Hueys, and off the ground in 6 minutes is quite respectable. It is not uncommon. It has become a tradition that when the intensive 8 days in the field are completed, the candidates fly over the post in mass formation. On graduation day, each man already wears his warrant officer's bars. He has received them the day before graduation, because his wings can only be awarded to him after he is officially a warrant officer. He has made it all the way. The man who graduates here is a qualified pilot, skilled and ready, and much needed. His next duty station will, in all likelihood, be Vietnam. And in Vietnam, the reason for all the effort and training and complex machinery remains: to make the man with the dirty boots and the clean weapon more effective. To get him to his objective faster, safer. To deliver him fresher, more ready, more able. To keep him better supplied in the combat zone. To get him to medical help faster if he should get hurt. This is what the choppers are for, and they have proven that they can do the job. So have the men who fly them. They are no less than what we called them at the start. Skilled, highly trained professionals. The chopper pilots.